30 for 30 podcast presents March 11th, 2020, the story of the day the NBA shut down and the pandemic became real for many Americans, as told by those who lived the events of that day and built entirely with archival and exclusive interviews, including interviews with Rudy Gobert and Dr. Anthony Fauci. 30 for 30 podcast presents March 11th, 2020. Subscribe and listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Thursday afternoon, and it is not just any Thursday. It is Thursday, March 11th, which I guess will be a date that we will remember forever because it is the day that the NBA shut down and a day that everybody remembers sort of internalizing the idea that this pandemic was going to be real and it was going to be big and it was going to be painful. And to help us reflect on that and what has happened since, let's bring in Ramona Shelburne, who wrote a wonderful story today, reflecting on specifically the sort of the NBA angle of, this date and what it means, but also just the larger issues. Ramona, how are you?
Doing okay, Zach. I think it's interesting this day that, we always talk about like how long does a year? I can't believe it's been a year that's passed. I'm like, feels like 10 years in a way, right? Like pandemic years are really long. And our lives are so different now, but it was interesting going back and kind of TikToking through the last days of our normal life or our previous life until we get to March 11th.
So you talked to Adam Silver, Michelle Roberts, people who were at the Jazz Thunder game, which I'm going to talk to Royce Young later today. So I remember that night I had gotten home from the Sloan conference a couple of days before. That was a huge mistake, obviously. And I was on my laptop sitting where I usually watch games, watching the Pistons and the Sixers in Philadelphia, because that was just the game I was watching that night. And Christian Wood was having a big game. And I remember that Christian Wood, it's a big game for Christian Wood. He's playing really well. And then my phone started blowing up with all of these messages like, what's happening in Oklahoma City? You got to check out what's happening in Oklahoma City. And I just thought, did someone get hurt? Like, I think they're playing, did Donovan Mitchell get hurt? Like, is there a scene? Like, what's going on? And I flipped over and I thought, whoa, boy, this is my night watching the Sixers and the Pistons is now over. And this is now the only thing that matters. And like an hour later, the NBA season was over. So retracing all of those interviews and all those steps and writing this big story today, what's the, it's so funny. It's not that far to actually look back, but it's also an exercise that I have frankly not really been that interested in doing. So what surprised you in doing it?
Yeah, I think what surprised me, Zach, is at the time, I feel like we were all in various states of denial, of various states of like, okay, is this like bird flu? Is this like swine flu? Is this, we'd seen this happen with viruses around the world and it doesn't necessarily reach our shores, or it reaches our shores, but it's contained. And, I remember that I had realized this was a bigger deal because out in California, the Warriors were planning to play a game without fans that day. And so I knew that was a really big deal. And I had been talking to both the Lakers, Dodgers, Clippers, all of the major sports teams out here in LA. And they had been having meetings with, the public health officials. So I knew about a week before how serious this was getting, but none of us, like not even, and just when I was reporting this out, even talking to Adam Silver, Michelle Roberts, like Adam Silver literally had a board of governors meeting that day where they were just talking about the possibility of playing without fans.
I remember reporting on it and some people in the league being like, is this really necessary? The economic hit of just this is going to be a big deal. Like I remember trying to figure out what had happened in that call and like rushing to do it for a news story, which in retrospect seems like I should have been rushing to do many other things except for that. Like,
feels pretty small. Right. And so I felt, I thought 1 year later, if I asked Adam what he really thought was going to happen back then, I remember saying, it was actually the last question of our interview. I said, Adam, what did you think was going to happen when you shut down the league on March 11th? And he goes, well, I think I just thought we would shut down for 30 days and we'd come up with some new protocols and then we'd be back in arenas with or without fans, maybe probably without fans. And I was like, really? Like you didn't, when you said shut down indefinitely, I mean, that landed to me like a thunderbolt, like, whoa. What does it? I literally remember sending a text to someone in the league saying, "What does indefinitely mean?" Okay, what does that mean? And this idea, like all of these storylines, because I had just gone to Lakers Clippers a couple days earlier, I'd gone to Lakers Bucks, like all of these storylines about the NBA, those were just done. And we did not know if we would restart the season. We did not know if there would ever be a resolution to any of these questions and storylines and things that we had been following. And even though I knew it was serious, like I had been tracking this, I had been very concerned about going to games. Even that last week, I did not go to the Lakers Nets game on the 10th. That was the last game that was played at Staples Center. Because I felt like, man, I've already really pushed this. I really don't like being in this crowd and these large groups of people. And I had felt like I had taken chances going to the Lakers Bucks and the Lakers Clippers. So I stayed home on the 10th. And later on, when, I remember the Nets come out and they had several players who tested positive for it. I was like, "Ooh, it's a good thing I didn't go to that game. I would have been in that locker room or would have seen those players." But it was just in reporting that even Adam Silver, who had been very aware of what was happening in China, they had 200 staffers in China where they were they had to be shut down. They were in lockdowns and they had to accommodate their employees. They had the board of governors meeting. He had had a meeting with Michelle Roberts earlier that day with the Players Association. I remember talking to Michelle and I go, "So how did you get from the Players Association offices, which, as you know, is accurate near Bryant Park in New York?" And
we still got something in New York. Okay. Not everything's in LA. We still got a few headquarters of things in New York.
So they had shut down the Players Association office the week before. And
by the way,
think the NBA offices had shut down.
Smart. So I remember going to the Sloan conference in Boston on whatever that weekend was, like March 6th, 7th, 8th or something.
Yep.
And people were dropping out left and right. And I remember Bill Simmons at the Ringer just put the kibosh on. Nobody was going. He shut it down.
Yep.
And there were some people who were like, "Oh boy, that's an inconvenience. Like this guy's supposed to be on a panel and blah, blah." And it was really smart of him to make that decision for, or whoever made it. I don't know if it was Bill, but whoever made it for the employees, just you have no agency in this. You're just not going. Because I went just because, it's what I do. I'm a workaholic. I knew it was stupid. Like I had a lot of friends that were bowing out and I was like, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to go and I just got to see all these people. Like, when am I going to see these GMs all in the same place again? There's a couple of games I can go to. I got to get my podcast hits. Like, I just got to do it. And it's like, whatever. But it just like the people who acted cautiously were the smart ones. And that's obvious in retrospect, but at the time it wasn't.
So I remember that day and talking to, everybody out here in LA where you had to kind of self-police. You had to there wasn't the public health officials. I remember Dr. Fauci had testified that morning on March 11th. He had gone to Congress and he had testified that morning. And even then, Adam reminded me of this when we had this conversation. There was no public health officials who were saying we have to shut down the NBA, where we have to shut down professional sports. I think Fauci had testified to Congress that day. Somebody had asked him point blank, should we be shutting down sports? And he said, well, we should definitely be thinking about playing without fans.
Right. And so in another story,
that was March 11th.
That was March 11th. So in another story, very similar to yours, our friends, Jeff Zilgett and Mark Medina at USA Today have a similar March 11th story. And Mark Tatum, the deputy commissioner of the NBA, talks about hearing Fauci say that on March 11th. Now, by that time, they've got the board of governor meeting scheduled where they're going to talk about how many fans, should we have fans, blah, blah. They've got the Warriors who are already going to play without fans because the state of California took that decision out of their hands. And Tatum talks about hearing Fauci say that day and having it sort of hit him like a thunderbolt of, oh, that's where we might get to real fast. And it turned out that that's where we got to real fast.
Yeah. And I think, Zach, it was going back and everybody tracing through. And that's why I think it's important to do these types of stories or podcasts, because as time goes on, you sort of lose the memories of it. You kind of lose how you were feeling in that moment. But the one thing that I felt that this one thing that resounded over and over is that even people who were very educated on this, who had taken this very seriously, Adam Silver had started to take this very seriously back in January, like the first league memo announcing protocols or virus memo list. Remember, they always came up with a different number.
Yeah, they're
coming
numbered like Dolores Umbridge's edicts in Harry Potter, and it got up to like
Yeah.
coronavirus memo number 85.
Yeah, and it was those started at the end of January. The first time the league started taking this and giving instructions to teams was about the same time David Stern had died, about the same time Kobe Bryant died in the helicopter accident. I mean, it was this, they were very aware of how serious this was. And yet, when the league comes to a halt, when the league shuts down on March 11th, it still feels like this giant thunderbolt that things move from threat to very stark reality in an instant.
Well, I remember vividly because one of the games at the Sloan Conference had been Celtics Jazz, and I was at the game. And
God.
I know Rudy and I know Donovan a little bit. I know Rudy better than Donovan. And so, of course, I make small talk with them in the locker room after the game. And then the news hits that Gobert has tested positive. And because, like, people also forget at the beginning, there was all of this, like, how contagious is it? How can you get it? And this is, I immediately just go back to, then the terror hits me of,
yep.
Okay, how long did I talk to him? Did we high five or were we already doing the fist bump thing? Had he showered or was he still sweaty?
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking about all this stuff. And it's like, this is crazy that this, like, just like this, it became super duper real for so many people. And by the way, the NBA, look, I don't think the NBA is some great heroic institution for being the first big league to shut down. Like, it was going to happen, whether it was the NBA that day or the next day or college basketball the day after that, somebody was going to be the first one. But I will say, by virtue of being the first one, they are absolutely right to say that it was a watershed event, because I cover the NBA for a living, as do you. We have lots of friends who don't care about the NBA, couldn't name any player in the NBA other than LeBron James, maybe. All of them know the NBA as the first big flashing red signal that this was a big deal. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who know nothing about the NBA, don't care about basketball, don't even know that there's the 3-point shot, who are like, oh, wow, the NBA. I mean, that was when I realized that this was going to be a real threat.
Well, and in those first few moments afterwards, we all kind of went like the same thing. I remember being very uncomfortable at games that last week. And I think I went into the bathroom to wash my hands, like, every 10 minutes. But it was so scary because, like, that was what we thought the problem was. Like, oh, you have to just wash your hands a lot, right? Sing happy birthday as you wash your hands. And it was something I went back and asked Adam, I go, why is it that we all knew, like, you're obviously, Adam's obviously a brilliant guy. I have been in the industry, like, I read stuff. I'm pretty literate on what's going on in the world. And even we failed to perceive the real true threat of it until it became Rudy Gobert tested positive. And then you do the math of realizing, like, how many teams they have played in the last 2 weeks. And you even personally going, oh my God, I just saw them. And how close was I? And Adam, just off the top of his head, he goes, there's a famous book by Ernest Becker called The Denial of Death. And I was like, whoa, yeah, that's a hell of a pull right off the top of your head. But obviously he had thought about this in a very reflective way of, how did this happen? How did we get there? And, I went back and kind of reread that. It's true. I mean, we all know that there's threats lurking around every corner all the time. But in order to go on with our lives, in order to live our lives, we have to sort of suppress that and, and just suppress it in a way where you can perceive there's a threat there, but it's not immediately right in front of your face until all of a sudden it is. And I think in reporting this, one of the things, like the 20 or 30 minutes from the public health commissioner in Oklahoma calling Governor Kevin Stitt, who happened to be at the game, happened to be at the game that night. He said because there was a corporation that his commerce secretary wanted him to meet, and they were going to be at the game, and they're going to meet in one of those restaurants, on the event level of the Chesapeake Energy Arena, right? We've all been through those, through those corridors before covering games there. And he just happened to be there, and he happened to get that phone, and he got the call, and he almost didn't take the call because he was in the middle of a business meeting. But he takes the call and he steps outside and, hey, a member of the Jazz has tested positive. And it was like, oh, okay, what do we do? And because he was right there, because Clay Bennett was, he could say, somebody go get me Clay Bennett, the owner of the Thunder. Go bring him here. We got to talk about this. They huddle in this room. I think it was either Sam Presti's office or was it just a conference room down below there. And they huddle up. It's like a group of guys from Thunder and call Adam Silver immediately. Like, think about these minutes. We're 10 minutes to tip off. You could literally hear the pregame people, the music, and you can literally hear the pregame music going, and the game's about to start, and they have 10 minutes to make this incredibly huge decision. And Clay Bennett calls Adam Silver, and they're like, "What? Oh my God, what do we do?" And Adam goes, "Well, what's the state policy?" So Clay Bennett says, "What's the NBA's policy? What should we do?" Adam says, "Well, what's the state policy?" And Clay Bennett says, "Well, I got the governor right here." So in other words, we're about to make this up right now. We're about to make up state policy right now because we have this very clear and present danger. And the governor had essentially said, if he wasn't at the game, he may not have answered his cell phone that night. It was, about 7:00 at night. He was home for the day, basically. He was doing a working meeting at night. But even if he had answered that call, he wouldn't have been close enough to bring Clay Bennett into a meeting room. He might have said, "Oh, I'll get him at halftime. It's about to tip off." Clay Bennett may not have answered the call right away. I mean, just think about these minutes that tick off here. And
well, it's also, I don't know if it was Mark and Jeff's story in USA Today or the big March 11th one in BuzzFeed, but someone actually pointed out, what if Gobert's test had come back an hour later? Or they raised the question of, did they time all these tests specifically so they knew it was going to come back before the game? What if it's halftime? Like, what kind of scene is that? And it's interesting to hear you talk, like, in a lot of ways, the two defining moments of the 2021 NBA or the 1920 NBA season are huddled phone calls. The one you're talking about, and the Bucks in the locker room in Orlando when they decide to sit out the game and then call all the Milwaukee legislators and power brokers to try and get the Jacob Blake case moving and things like that. It's really, that's the NBA season is these two moments more than the basketball.
Yeah. And, Adam was sitting outside he'd driven home and he's sitting in a car outside his apartment, and Michelle Roberts is sitting in a car outside her apartment. She said an Uber. And that was, we had a long discussion about how crazy it was that she was taking the subway and Uber still.
The Uber driver should have broken the story. The Uber driver was sitting on a huge scoop.
Seriously. And Michelle people didn't know. Michelle gets a couple of phone calls from Chris Paul going, "What's going on?" And she hadn't been told yet because it was all happening right in those moments. And the guys in Oklahoma City have to make this first call of like, what do we do in this exact moment? And Rob Hennigan and Donnie Strack come running onto the court. They pause the game. And I think they did something really smart. And Robbie Hennigan had this line to me. He goes, it was really a tense situation, but we were all pretty calm in that room. You remembered it was quiet in the room. And what they did essentially is say, let's take a pause. Let's just buy ourselves a little bit of time so that we're not making this incredibly important decision overnight, like in too fast. We need to make the right decision. So initially what they did, remember, they said, we have to pause the game. We have to decide if we're going to continue the game. And, we had a pretty lengthy conversation about, somebody said, if we're going to postpone the game, if we're going to cancel it, they didn't know if it was airborne. They didn't know, where had people been exposed. Now, Gobert wasn't even at the game. He was home at his hotel. And I don't think he knew the results yet. Like the governor of Oklahoma knew that Rudy Gobert had tested positive before Rudy did, but he wasn't even at the game, but he had definitely been exposed to other Jazz players. I mean, he had definitely been around all of them. Well, they were on the court.
I remember league officials, team officials, everyone we talked to, again, how quaint this is, right?
Yeah.
Taking solace, and maybe it wasn't even quaint. Maybe it was right to take solace in. Taking solace in, well, maybe it's a good sign that Mitchell is the only other player that got it in the Jazz traveling party. We got 40, 50 people. Rudy has it. Only one other player has it. Now, we don't even know still to this day how they got it, if one gave it to the other, if it's totally unrelated. So let's be clear about that. But there was this sense of relief of, oh, maybe it's not so bad. Like if it didn't spread that much within a team, maybe this will all just not be that big of a deal. Meanwhile, Italy's on lockdown. It's a complete global crisis. But there was that thought of like, maybe there's a glimmer of hope there. Turns out, I mean, not really, but.
Yeah. Well, what I keep coming back to is, very quickly we moved into, okay, take a pause. Let's, and Adam even said, I thought it was going to be 30 days. I thought it was going to be a 30-day pause. And Michelle had been already that day in the meeting that, the Players Association, people had walked for her and a couple other staffers, colleagues. They had walked from their offices near Bryant Park up to the NBA offices, which is up on 55th Street. And they walk, about a 20-minute walk, I guess, if you're moving quickly. And she had already been saying, we should be testing everybody. We should be testing everybody in the league right now. This is a threat to our guys, et cetera. But there was no tests. And this is yet another one of those moments where if Rudy Gobert had gotten sick someplace else, if Rudy Gobert had gotten sick in a state where they really did not have a lot of tests at all, or it was there was more cases, but Oklahoma had just had its first COVID case 5 days earlier. It was a person in Tulsa. So they had a lot of test kits. And at the time, if you remember, it was really difficult to get a COVID test. Like they didn't have all the reagents. Remember, there was this very bungled rollout of the testing, and the CDC tried to develop their own instead of taking the test kit from the WHO, where it had been sent around the world. And so it was a political issue of not being tested, of not using up these tests. But I remember that night, everybody on the Jazz was tested. And that was kind of a story that was like, why are we using up all these tests on these basketball players who are not symptomatic and haven't come in contact with anyone who's traveled from China and Northern Italy, right? Those were the conditions upon which you were supposed to have to be tested. And, I think they paid back the state of Oklahoma for that. They went out there, even the Thunder, they wanted to, they were, should we test our guys? Cause they were on the court at some point. I remember talking to Matt Tumbleson, who's the PR director there in Oklahoma City. And he had to stay in a hotel that night. He has 4 kids. And he was like, well, I've been in contact with members of the Jazz. I've been in close contact for more than 15 minutes. So I should stay at home to make sure that I don't have it. And he didn't want to go home to his family that night. That was a big deal. Plus there was even the ramifications. The Jazz had checked out of their hotel. They were staying at a place called the 21C. It's a really nice hotel. They had checked out, and that hotel now had all these events where everybody there was like, whoa, we don't want to go to that hotel. That's where the Jazz have been staying. But they had to get the Jazz someplace else to stay. So the governor's chief of staff is calling around to every hotel in Oklahoma City saying, like, will you guys take the Jazz in? Before they knew the results of those tests, it was a real scramble to get them a place to stay, to the point where Royce Young has been telling his story. Sam Presti's calling, trying to arrange for cots at the arena because they were sort of like, oh, we don't want the Jazz. I mean, thank God they finally got home. But in the podcast that we did, the 30 for 30, Sarah Todd, who covers the Jazz, in Utah, she said, they all got tested because, of course, they'd been they'd been in contact with Rudy Gobert and Donovan and guys in the locker room. And she's like, it's literally my job to have close contact with Rudy Gobert. Well, they said, you should quarantine for 14 days until you know if you tested positive. She goes, well, how am I supposed to I don't live here. Where am I going to quarantine? How am I going to get home to Utah to even do that? And her mom was supposed to come visit her. And she's like, Mom, don't come. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I think we look back on this now, and the lessons that I thought Adam and Michelle articulated really well is, one, the virus is in charge. Anything you think you can do about predicting how the course of this is going to go, don't. No matter where you think you are in the course of this pandemic or in the course of this virus, don't go there, because the virus is in charge. So even now, as the league, and this was one of the takeaways I had from my conversation with Adam, was he said, I'm more optimistic now than I have been even a few weeks or months ago that we can get back to something resembling normal by the beginning of next season. But I say that with a huge caveat, which is the virus is in charge. Anytime you think you can predict a few months out, you can't. And, on the one hand, it's like music to everybody's ears. Wow, maybe we could get back to something resembling normal by next fall. But on the other hand, don't get cocky. Don't assume that we have a handle on all of this, because it's gonna, Zach, I think this is the next big story we all have to cover is, the vaccine rollout, and what does that mean for the restrictions that the league has been playing under? If you take the vaccine, is it like a passport to be able to go out to dinner again, or to be able to go out to see your families again? That is going to be the next frontier of this.
Well, I can apply for the vaccine on April 12th, and you better believe at 12:01 a.m. on April 12th, I'm going to be on my computer just as furiously as I was when a new player became available in my fantasy league like 15 years ago, when I had to get on at 3:01 to try and acquire Mark Teixeira in my fantasy league. I will be trying to get that vaccine. So I remember when it hit me, it was like a week later, and we're all obsessed with like, can the NBA restart? Is this the end of the season? What does that mean for X, Y, and Z? Someone within the league who was really on the ball with this stuff pointed me to a study that a UK university, I can't remember which one, had done already, modeling what they thought was going to be the next 2 years of the pandemic. And this person said to me, you should read this. You should, first of all, you should sit down and brace yourself. Second of all, you should read this. And you're immediately going to be concerned about next season. Forget this season. Like, we'll try to figure it out. The league will try to figure it out. Next season is not going to look anything like, this assumption that next season, AKA the current ongoing season, is going to be normal. You need to disabuse yourself of that immediately and read this and figure out what we're in for. And I read it and I was like, whew, all the curves are pointing in bad directions and all of this. And about 10 days later, 10 days after that, I started feeling sick. And I laid down in my bed and I couldn't fall asleep, and I started feeling worse. And I took my temperature and it was 102.5. And I said, uh-oh, this isn't good. And I got tested and I had it. I was one of the early March COVID people. And it knocked me out for 2 days. Now, it didn't knock me out. Like, I've had a fever before. I know what a fever is, right? It's aches, pains. You can't sleep. It's miserable, but I know what it is. And I finally took Tylenol after about 48 hours, because I was like, I just need to go to sleep. I just need to get rest. And the fever shot way down immediately. And I thought, okay, maybe I don't have it. Maybe it was just a fever. Then the smell went away and the taste, and I was like, uh-oh, okay, I surely have this. And I was tired for 2 weeks. Like, walking around the block was hard for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I know friends who get it now who have had it in the last 2 months, and they're relatively asymptomatic, and they're just like over it. No big deal. Like, oh, I had it. Hey, that's kind of interesting. I can't explain to people, even as someone who had, I guess, what is a mild case, like in March of 2020, it was terrifying to have the coronavirus. You didn't know what it was. All of these stories are flooding you about what it could do to your heart, what it could do to your kidney, what it could do to your lungs. Oh my God, what's happening? What do you feel? And I will tell you this, 6 weeks after I felt fine, I was playing with my daughter in the yard, and I was, my wife was throwing footballs to me, and I was doing like wide receiver cuts to like entertain my daughter. I was like making funny noises and running in diagonal directions around the yard and all this. And an hour later, I felt a tinge in my chest, and I was like, huh, that doesn't seem normal. Like, it was like a lung thing, like something wasn't right. And I felt it for like 8 hours, and then it went away. And every month, like clockwork, for about 8 hours, I would feel something in my chest that was not normal. And all the doctors were like, it's your lungs. Your lungs are healing themselves. All my blood tests are fine, this and that. But I'm telling you now, just getting it, I think getting it then, I'm still screwed up from it, not physically, but mentally. Everything that happens to me, everything you feel, all these creaks in your body that normally you don't think about. Now I'm like, uh-oh, is that something, or is that nothing? What actually happened in there? Like, what do my lungs look like? And not only that, it just mentally, I go to darker places now than I did before, like mortality, all these things, like all the denial of death stuff that you're talking about. I have to work a lot harder to do the denial of death. And so March was scary. I mean, I remember texting with players in the league who had it and people in the league who had it, because we were like a support group. At the beginning, you felt like you needed to talk to people to understand what they were. I talked to Doris about it. Doris has been public about her case. We talked about it all the time. It was scary. And now it's so strange. A year later, obviously it seems like a long time has passed. Sometimes it seems like no time has passed, but I find it disconcerting to revisit March 2020. As good as these stories are and as well reported as they are, I get like the shakes revisiting reading these stories today.
Zach, it's interesting thinking about it, because I think the first 2 weeks I had like imaginary phantom things. Like I felt like tightness and heartbeat, and I kept just being so scared of everything. And remember, we had no consciousness about masks back then. None. Initially, there was nothing. And
you couldn't
I
get
was like
them.
afraid. Yeah, you couldn't get masks. I was afraid to be around anybody. And I knew it was just anxiety. It was just this fear of like, oh my God, we've been in these arenas, we've been in, and mine fortunately was not anything. It was just literally anxiety. But I mean, so many nights I felt, God, do I have it? Do I have it? What do I do? If I have it, what do I do with my son? He's 2 years old. Okay, who's going to take care of him? Oh, have I exposed my parents, my son, my husband? Oh, like every little thing, we all were in that place. So I can't even imagine what you went through, knowing like, oh, these are real symptoms. Like this isn't just crushing anxiety in your chest.
It was a fever, right? It was a fever and fatigue, but it was a fatigue that lasted a long time. But I will say, obviously a lot of stuff that has happened in the last year has made you question whatever faith you have in some parts of humanity. But on the other hand, it's sort of reaffirmed your faith in the adaptability of people, and for me, it's almost hard for me, not hard for me to talk about, but I rarely get emotional, Ramona. You know me. If I get I'm a good suppressor. When I get emotional, let's just talk about baseball or basketball or something. I look at my daughter, school thrown into chaos, friends scattered all over the country. She's just turned 6 years old, and she just rolled with all of it. Like stronger than my wife and I, stronger than most adults I know. And all kids are like that. Kids are absolutely incredible. You worry about them. How is this affecting them? I'm sure it's affecting them in ways that they're not capable of verbalizing or even understanding. But to see her just roll with everything, and to see all of kids her age just sort of, okay, I can do it. What do you need? What are we doing? I can roll with it. It's really, I'm very, very proud of her. And it's one of the things that I sort of am able to look at and say, well, that's one thing that isn't terrible, is I got to see this little girl be very strong, and people got to see kids be very strong, all over. All the kids have handled this pretty well. But I don't know what else is in your story. I mean, I read it, and like I said, I don't particularly enjoy reading these, but they're necessary.
Well, it's interesting in the story. There was a lot that I left out, right? That's in the podcast, but
give us one podcast cutting room floor, or one thing that's in the pod that's on your story.
Yeah. Well, I think when we talked to, if you listen further on, there was obviously more games that night that went on, and just hearing you talk about your daughter, it reminds me of this thing from JJ Redick that's in the podcast, where the Pelicans are in Sacramento that night, and that was one of the last games that was supposed to be played. And they're sitting in their locker room, and everything else has been canceled, and it's like, okay, are we going to play this game though? I mean, we're already here. Should we play? And I think JJ Redick calls like David Griffin coming into the locker room saying, "Come on, guys, the Kings are all out of the court, and they're making fun of you guys for not coming out." JJ's like, "Dude, we're not coming out. We're not going to play the game. Like, what are we doing?" And they all go back to the hotel. And the idea was like, they had a flight in the morning. They were just going to go home to their families. And Griff hands JJ, who's like the great veteran there. He goes, here's the wine list. Why don't you order us something? And he goes, "Hey, take it easy. Okay. Like, we don't need to go, I know you're a wine guy, but let's within reason." And JJ's like, "I'm going to order whatever the hell I want right now." And we just order for the team. And they order the wine, but even as this is going on, the minutes that are ticking off, every minute that goes by, and they made a decision. Why are we even staying here tonight? Literally, the only thing anybody in the league wanted to do, the only thing anybody in the hotel or the locker room, in JJ's retelling of this, was they just want to get home to their family. Just want to get home to their family and make sure that they're safe and make sure that everyone's okay. And it brought everyone in the league, not just in the league, but around the world, really, to their knees of just how clear and present this danger was, how this threat had arrived at our doorstep and in our homes and in our lives. And that instinct that we all have of like, just hug your kids tighter. You know, I mean, Zach, weren't you I feel like I had just seen you at Kobe's memorial. I mean, that all
Which,
of
by
the
way,
beginning of,
who knows if it was in the air there? It probably was somewhere.
Yeah. And
which, by the way, I just want to make this 100% clear.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to put together that I was talking with the Jazz people and then I got it. First of all, there was like a 2.5 week separator between those two events. And second of all, I was on Amtrak's at games, living in the city, taking the subway. There was like 9,000 times I could have been exposed to it. I just want to be 100% clear on that.
Yeah. And the time frame even feels like it could have been later, but it's one of those things where everything we had all been, I feel like I've had so many conversations with you at the beginning of 2020, whether it would be the days after, you know, Kobe Bryant was killed in the helicopter crash with all those other kids that still we're all never going to get over that. I mean, I could just go right back to that moment and cry because it feels so real. And then we have his funeral in late February. And then this, I mean, everything that we had experienced at the beginning of 2020 was just don't take any of this for granted, man. That just hug the people you love tightly because you can't take any of it for granted that it's going to even be there tomorrow. And that book that Adam referenced, I mean, that's what we do every day. That's what we're going to do as we go back and reemerge into the world after the vaccines and after all the different waves of this virus have passed. There's still even a part of me that's like, once you get that vaccine, I know it'll feel better, but it's a weird, you know, we're all going to take some time before we take the mask off. Right.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't want to talk about this anymore, Ramona.
I know. I got it. I don't blame you.
Go read Ramona's story. It's on the front of ESPN now. Listen to the 30 for 30 podcast, March 11th, 2020. Ramona Shelburne, maybe I'll see you at the NBA Finals. Who knows? Like,
maybe.
Am I allowing myself to be a little optimistic? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
It's been a long year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Momo.
Thanks, Zach.
Stephen A's World streams weekdays on ESPN Plus, bringing fans Stephen A. Smith's entertaining perspective and deep expertise with signature guests. The best interviews from Stephen A's World are now available as a podcast every Wednesday. Listen wherever you get your podcast and watch Stephen A's World on ESPN Plus. All right, let's bring on somebody who was in the bowels of this on March 11th, 2020 in Oklahoma City. Our guy there does a great job covering the Thunder and lots of other NBA things. Mr. Royce Young, how are you?
I'm doing great, Zach. Doing really good. It's been a year. It's been a long year, but it also doesn't, everybody keeps talking about how it feels like it's been forever ago. It doesn't feel that long ago to me, if I'm being honest.
It depends how I think about it. So let me ask you this. You go to almost every Thunder game, right? I mean, I know I see you sitting in your seat almost every time.
Right.
Was there any chance you were going to skip this particular game? Or was this always going to be like, I'm going there pre-virus, everything like that? Was there a part of you that was like, I shouldn't go to this game?
No, I don't think there was ever a point of me that thought about not going. That's a good question, though, because I remember, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think that they told us to stop traveling like ESPN did maybe 5 days before that, or they were pulling people off the road that were traveling. And there was kind of like this conversation going of like, if you don't feel comfortable about it, like, no sweat, don't worry about it. And so like for the first time ever, I was kind of thinking about, like, I was a little more conscious about going to games. And like, certainly when I went to the arena that night, I was very conscious of like, I'm going. Now we didn't really know gathering in large groups was, you know, the worst thing to do at that time. But like little things of like touching the same pin as somebody else, you know, doorknobs, all that stuff. I was very, very aware of it. But to answer your question, no, I was always going to go.
Did you get any of Chris Paul's wine that he brought for the Jazz players?
No, I didn't. I got left out on all that stuff. I think, you know, at one point when they thought that the Jazz might have to stay at the arena that night, Sam Presti was going to bring in some cots. Like he was arranging to get cots for the Jazz. At no point did he ask me if I needed a cot. I was very offended by that.
Oh, you don't get a cot. I'm sorry to tell you. You get the floor, man. Come on.
Yeah. I was trying to hash out, like, okay, where's the best place to sleep in an NBA arena? Where would you sleep in an NBA arena, Zach? If you can't go to locker room, can't go to coaching. I can't.
The coach's office is where you want to be because that gets you. You get into the players' lounge and all that. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought about this, Royce. Never.
No, it's not something I thought of until a year ago today, where I was trying to hash out. My producer and I, Patrick Abrahams, were like, okay, so if we're sleeping here tonight, like, what are we doing? Are we going to go out to our cars? Are we like, what are we?
Car. There you go. Car. If you can leave, car is not a terrible option.
Yeah. But at the same time, we didn't want to be caught asleep either. And the Jazz, stand up and walk out of their locker room, and we were asleep at the wheel. So just, I guess pun intended. I don't. Really
so where were you holed up during all this? Like once the game's called and everyone gets sort of whatever sequestered, where are you? I mean, besides being on TV frequently.
Right. So for the first 2 hours, maybe hour and a half, I was in kind of this hallway. There's, as you've seen at NBA arenas, there's like a kind of a docking bay where the buses arrive and there's metal detectors the players go through. And then there's kind of a long hallway in the bowels of the arena where it kind of leads to the locker room. And we wanted to be right by the Jazz locker room. Of course, they wouldn't let us, understandably so. So there's like a set of double doors that kind of was step one to get back to the hallway where the Jazz locker room was. So for the first hour and a half, we stood right there. We were just right there. We wanted to be there for anybody walking out, like the dream TV situation is like, I'm doing in the middle of a live shot as Thunder players or Jazz players are walking out behind me. So we just posted up there for a long time. And then at a certain point when health officials started arriving, they kind of politely asked us to move. And so we did. So then we went out and we were on the court for a long time. Probably the next 2 hours on the court for a while. And there was different times. I remember Donovan Mitchell and Jordan Clarkson came out of the locker room at one point and they were out there and they were wearing blue rubber gloves and they were just kind of talking to each other. And we saw them and then they saw us and they could tell we saw them and they were immediately it was like a cartoon. You could see the puff of smoke as they turned and ran away from us because they could tell we were a little.
I'm picturing I don't know if it's Scooby-Doo. What was the cartoon that was the master of the shots where someone's chasing and you can see them, one person's going down the hallway, then someone goes the wrong way. I'm just picturing that kind of. Is it Scooby-Doo? Yeah. I'm picturing that kind of sequence.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it.
It's funny. Of all the 30 teams in the NBA, the one that I could see being most ahead on this in terms of just research and preparation and understanding what was happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Jazz actually, to their credit, were. I mean, I know that Quinn Snyder and other Utah officials had been talking to their players about this weeks before this had happened, but there is just no way. The Thunder are never caught unprepared for anything. Right. Sam Presti is never caught unprepared for anything. I wonder, do you remember talking to him or Oklahoma City officials in the weeks before this about and hearing from them, hey, this thing is coming, or because I just knowing them, I know that they were ready to whatever degree anybody was ready. I know they must have been.
Yeah, they were absolutely aware of it, and as you know, there's a lot of people in the NBA that were trying to do their part to make teams aware of it. But I think just such as the situation was specifically in Oklahoma City is it was not at all in Oklahoma. Rudy Gobert was the first case in Oklahoma City, right? It was something where, I think it was kind of difficult for some people in Oklahoma to mentally prepare for it. Now, the Thunder are operate in a different kind of world than just the state does itself. But, I don't know that I had that many conversations with him about the virus. Now, I know there was multiple people on the team that told me kind of in retrospect that they were very aware and kind of prepared for what might be to come. And they understood once this hits, then there's no going back. I remember talking to Matt Tumbleson, who does PR for the Thunder.
Second Tumbleson name check on this podcast. I don't like where this is going.
I've got to quit shouting him out all the time. But, I saw him after the game was canceled at one point. We crossed paths and he was really upset and kind of bothered. And he was like, man, we were having such a good year and it's just such a shame for it to go this way. I was like, what are you talking about? You guys will be back playing in 2 weeks. They'll sort this out. And he was like, no, it's over. It's over, man. He was like, if you've been following this, if you understand what's been going on and the things that we've learned, like there's no going back now. Like we're not coming back. And I was like, he was the first person that I'd really talked to that was kind of put it that starkly to me.
I said on my podcast a week later, I said, like, I don't feel confident in any of these scenarios, but if you laid out 8 possible scenarios for the resumption of the NBA season or for the future of the 2019-20 NBA season, and one of them was there is no season. One of them was there's a bubble and it actually works. One of them is there is no bubble but no fans. And you just like on, and you force me to pick which one is going to happen. I would pick no season. Like I was ready for there to be no NBA champion, no NBA season. Obviously, I was wrong. The NBA did an incredible job setting up a bubble that really, really worked, obviously, in Orlando, in a place where the cases were spiking around the bubble, and it worked. It worked anyway. But I remember feeling the same way of this is it. I mean, there's not. See,
I was
be
completely
an NBA
naive
champion.
the other way. I remember having a conversation with Presti on the phone at one point that night, talking about like what the scenarios are. And I'm sitting there saying like, what do you think you'll be back? Like playing games in 2 weeks? Like, do you think that'll be it? And he was like, I don't know about that, you know? And I was like, yeah, surely. Like, right. Like we'll like shut down the league for like a couple weeks. They'll figure it out and then come back and you play games. And I mean, I was just a complete moron when it came to that.
No, it's nobody knew anything. Nobody knew anything. So are you? When I go back and watch the video of Donnie Strack, the Thunder team doctor, running onto the floor, and a bearded Rob Hennigan running onto the floor, are you in the background?
Oh, I'm sure
I
am.
see you in your seat. You're in your seat when all that's happening.
Yeah, if you're looking around, I mean, yeah, I was sitting there. I was ready for tip off. I mean, it was literally at tip off. So I was sitting there, and I'm sure there's a point where the referee, I remember it was Ben Taylor was the referee, and he comes over to the score table. And you could probably see me awkwardly leaning over everybody because I'm trying to hear I'm like standing up, like just like sprawled out across the table, trying to hear the words that he's saying because I wanted to hear what he was telling them, which is what he said. The commissioner asked me to delay the game. But you know, that's part of being a reporter is you gotta be a pretty good mouth reader and eavesdropper, which that's what I was doing.
So it's funny. I was not funny, but I was reading all these retrospectives today. And, you know, I remember the Thunder public address announcer, whose name escapes me at the moment. My apologies. I'm sure you know it. Telling the fans what was happening and obviously saying there's no game. I didn't remember him saying we are all safe at the conclusion. That is like this is not an insult because I don't know what you say, but like you are safe. And then the conclusion is we are all safe. That's like some Big Brother. It's off-putting almost to hear.
It's like in Batman when Bane puts his hand on the guy and he says, "Do you feel in charge?" You know, it's like one of those types of things where it's like, you know, he's trying to assure you that you're safe. It's like, wait a second, I wasn't even considering that I might not be safe. Why should I be safe right now? You know,
you are all safe. Yeah. Everybody in this enclosed building has been safe the whole time.
And you know, you talk about the Thunder and being prepared and meticulous. Like you know that them coming up with what he was going to say right there was like, you know. Part of the reason maybe the game took 20 minutes to decide whether or not to cancel it was because they needed to come up with the exact thing for him to say right there because they wanted to try to get that as right as they could.
So did you get tested that night or no?
I didn't. A lot of people asked me, you know, I remember there were a few people that even encouraged me to try to get a test just because, you know, just like kind of the public assurance of it. Since I was on TV so much in those 48 hours. But like, I mean, I looked at it practically. Like I was exposed to no one. I mean, I was never around Rudy Gobert. I was never around Donovan Mitchell. I was around some Jazz staffers, you know, like, but I was never close to like Quinn Snyder. Maybe I talked to David Locke for a little while and like, you know, we talked face to face for a little while that night, but like, I really wasn't around the Jazz that much. I was never in their locker room. And like at that time, obviously testing was very scarce and it was hugely controversial that the whole Jazz traveling party got tested. And so for me, I was like, there's just no point in me getting tested. Like, and they told me like the Thunder did and the NBA, like if you start feeling symptoms, if you're concerned, like let us know. I mean, they were very, very helpful in that regard, but I just thought like, there's just no reason to. I feel fine. And like, I don't think I was ever really exposed.
I'm trying to think, and forgive me people if I'm forgetting, have the Thunder had any contact tracing any sitting out for contact tracing, anything this season? I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I think that they had maybe one player. Boy, yeah, we're both going to get a phone call about this. I think that they might have had one player that sat out, but I feel like he only sat out for like a game, so that wouldn't have been.
I asked because when there was a couple testing issues in the bubble, because people had to remember their testing appointments, all of this, and obviously DeAndre Ayton famously missed one. I just remember a couple people in the league saying, "Yeah, we know," and this is not a shot against the Suns, who have done a wonderful job. Monty Williams is incredible; they've done a great job. I just remember someone saying, "Yeah, there are some teams we know we just are not going to have to worry about their guys being on the ball." And I was like what? And they're like, "Well, we don't have to worry about the Thunder. Like all the Thunder players will make their tests. Like it will be taken care of. They will be on the ball about it." I don't know, any other memories from that night you want to share? I mean, you've talked about it a million times. Is there any story you haven't told? Is there anything you think is too silly or trivial to say, but is like randomly sticks in your head? Is like those are sometimes the most interesting things to me. Is like the little silly trivial stuff you remember.
I mean, there's like, it was never like this blur to me. Like it's very vivid, and I remember a lot about it. One of the things that sticks out to me, and I feel like I'm the only person in the world that found it significant, Zach, is that just the kind of the situation going into the game with Rudy Gobert, and he was ill, and then Quinn Snyder ruled him out pregame, and we're sitting there, and he says Rudy Gobert is out, and then for Jazz PR to come to reporters 10, 15 minutes later and say no, he misspoke. Rudy Gobert is still questionable. That was always just so striking to me that like that's kind of how naive we were at the time to think that like they knew Rudy Gobert was being tested for COVID-19. I mean, like everybody understood that, but nobody really thought he might have it, right? Like he was still questionable for tip-off. They were going to put him in a car and drive him over for the game with no warm-up to play in the game if that test had come back negative because Gobert felt well enough to play. And that's always just.
And by the way, when I have a fever, if I got a fever and a stuffy nose, you better believe I'm milking that for all it's worth. Like Rudy has said he didn't think he had the virus. He just said, I thought I was sick, and my default when I'm sick is I'm going to keep going. Now, that's my default when I'm sick too. Like I'll keep going. I'll keep working. I'll be sluggish. But if I have a fever, I will be like, give me the bell. Let me ring it when I want some soup. Yeah. And, I'm just milking that for all it's worth.
As we know, as parents of children, it's an excuse to take a timeout. Being sick with a fever is almost like, well, I'm sorry. I just got to go take a nap, everybody. I can't help it. I've got to tend to my body. I will tell you one other story that comes to mind that I really haven't told all that often is that when all the Oklahoma like nurses and health officials showed up in their like gowns and masks and everything, and they're like ripping, they kind of had like a little staging area in where one of the like the actual tunnels that you run from the back of the arena out onto the floor, and somebody like pulled a curtain shut right there, and they were like tearing open test kits and getting ready to go back there, and me like thinking I'm like capital J journalist, like, and that I have the right to see everything that's going on at every moment. I like went back there and I was like, hey, what's going on behind this curtain? And like there was like a big burly security guy, like arena security guy standing there. And he was like, you cannot be back here. And it's like, I don't know who I thought I was or what I thought I was doing, but I was like holding up my credentials. Like, do you see this thing? This means I can go anywhere. You better move it. And as you know me, I'm pretty non-confrontational and pretty polite. And I'm just like dropping F-bombs in this guy's face thinking that I'm like something important and that I have every right to see what's going on behind that curtain. And I've kind of long been embarrassed about
hey man,
how much I freaked out.
That was a stressful night. There was a stressful night, and you had a lot of responsibilities, and you handled them beautifully. And I was just sitting at home trying to think about what life was going to be like for the next month, year, 2 months, 2 weeks. I didn't know. Can we talk about the Thunder a little bit?
Sure.
Because
the Thunder are a team. Yeah.
The Thunder are a basketball team that plays in the National Basketball Association, and I feel like I want to talk about them, and you're on, so let's talk about them.
Yeah.
They are 15-21. They have the same record as the New Orleans Pelicans. I can't tell if I should be contemptuous of the Pelicans for that being true, or that's a good thing about the Thunder. They are a strange brew of players. Like there's Kenrich Williams and Mike Muscala, and the Roby kid is pretty interesting. They have found a way to make this work. They've been competitive despite Horford missing a bunch of games, Hill missing a bunch of games. Just covering the team. When you cover a team like this that has these two veterans who are not part of the actual plans. Then you got a whole slew of young guys, and it's like some of these guys might work out, some of them don't. How do you cover it? Like, what are you looking for? What's happened in these first 36 games that has actual importance for the Thunder 3 years from now, 4 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point, Zach, that like when you're looking at players like that on a team, it is kind of who are the 2 or 3 that are going to stick long term. You know, who are the guys that you may discover? Who are your Robert Covingtons, so to speak? You know, like the 76ers kind of found a guy and like that you didn't necessarily anticipate. Like, is Hamidou Diallo a guy? Like, Hamidou Diallo is having a really nice season, doing some interesting things. Is he a guy? And I think that they're trying to kind of figure those sorts of things out with some of these players. You obviously know SGA. He's a borderline all-star. Like, he's having a remarkable season. If you look at his numbers, averaging 23 a game on 50, 40, 80 shooting. He's putting together
considering the supporting cast and that the 2 veteran members of the supporting cast have not been around. I mean, Horford's played a fair amount of games. Actually, he hasn't missed that many games, but I did not expect – I thought Shea would have a high-volume, middling efficiency season just because, like, there's no – he has the support is just not really there. He does
not force it. He just does not force it ever. He plays with so much composure. It's kind of shocking. I thought he was going to be somebody go out there and be like, Chris Paul's gone. This is my team. I'm going to chuck it. Let's see if I can average 29 a game. And like, that is just not his mentality.
Now it feels like they just got him, but this is his 3rd season, which means he's eligible for an extension after this season. I'm assuming the Thunder will just max him out, given that's their track record when they have a great young player. This is Oklahoma City. It's not a free agent draw that they will just say, here it is. Here's the most we can offer you. Do you expect that, or do you think I just can't? They have so little committed going forward. I don't know what else they would do.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect that. Now, I will say that there's a flip side here, Zach. That you know, the Thunder's plan, so to speak, that Sam Presti has been pretty transparent about what he's trying to accomplish, is not really going according to plan. They're winning too many games, and like they want to draft high in the lottery. They want to get the next. You know, I mean, it's pie in the sky, but they want the next Westbrook Durant combo. I mean, that's what they want to build another championship level team in Oklahoma City, and they understand that you've got to draft in the top 5 for the most part to be able to do that. So,
well, they were initially did they end up the one dissenting vote on lottery reform?
Yes.
Did they actually they voted no in the end? Which, by the way, I admire their conviction and Sam Presti's conviction and the ownership's conviction, because there was a lot of whispering about, I don't like this change. And then in the end, everyone just did what the NBA wanted, except the one team who actually had the guts to vote no.
Right. And Presti was very influential. I think that they even had the rules a little bit different than that originally, and they tweaked it to get to what they are currently. And Presti was very influential in kind of making a strong case for that reason, because, I mean, I think he saw the writing on the wall. But, you know, when it comes to SGA, you know, I think they can ask themselves, is he too good to completely like strategically tank with? But, you know, is he good enough to build a high caliber contender with? And I think that's kind of the question that they're going to be asking themselves.
This is why before the draft, I don't know if we talked about this, but before the draft, I threw out the idea, purely speculative. And in fact, I said, I don't think the Thunder would do this. I'm not sure if they should or would. I actually kind of leaned against no, but I said, I don't think it's crazy to pitch the idea of Shea to Minnesota for the number 1 pick in the draft. Like, if you, for exactly the reason that you're talking about, if you don't think he's the guy and all you want is the guy, then that trade makes some sense. Now, he's been so good this season that I still think you kind of just pay him, but it's interesting you're still bringing this sort of line of thought up.
I just, you know, and also he's 22, so you're talking about like aligning timelines there. And if they don't land a top 4 pick this year with this great draft class, and they have to try to kind of recycle this, now you're talking about separating the timelines between, you know, your top 5 pick and Shea, and, you know, he's going to be 28 when the next guy's starting to kind of figure it out. So I think that that's a question that they could kind of ask themselves. Now, all that to be said, I've sat here and asked myself, Zach, why do I think that Shea is not one of those guys? Like, when I look at his season and his numbers, like, what gives me a reason to think that, like, if you look at his history throughout basketball, he's always been better than what people thought. He was better in high school than what people thought. He was better at Kentucky than what people thought. He was better his rookie season with the Clippers than people thought. Showed up in OKC, did the same thing. So, like, I'm sitting here asking myself, why do I think Shea's not one of those guys? Like,
you know
I'm
why?
not sure I have an answer why.
I'll tell you why. Because he plays weird. That's the only reason why. Because by the numbers this season, he's been better than at least as good and probably a little better than De'Aaron Fox. He's a better defensive player than De'Aaron Fox. and the Kings give De'Aaron Fox all the money they can give him, and it's like a huge triumph for the Kings. And I love De'Aaron Fox. I think he's a very good player. I think he has a certain spirit and leadership quality to him that will be important as the Kings get better. But if he gets that and it's an organizational triumph, well, then you, of course, give it to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it's just the 25% max, or maybe the designated whatever max. It's not a hugely damaging max. And just one thing about that fake trade I proposed, maybe one of the reasons that mitigated against them doing that was maybe they didn't think there was maybe they and many other teams didn't think there was the guy in this draft. Now, LaMelo Ball looks like a guy, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, think about it this way, and you're smarter than me, Zach, so you can tell me I'm crazy, but like most people would agree that Ben Simmons is a building block franchise player, right? But like if Sam Presti called up Daryl Morey right now and said, I'll give you SGA for Ben Simmons, like, is that a trade? I mean, like, I think the perception is that Ben Simmons is like a franchise guy. He was a number one pick. Or even, I'll go one crazier on you, okay? What about Ja Morant? Like, what makes you think Ja Morant is more of a franchise player than SGA? Like, I don't know that I could.
I'll tell you, man. Like,
there's charisma, there's athleticism.
I think I'm telling you, I think it's just because Shai plays weird, and because he has this herky jerky change of pace. Everything looks kind of strange. He doesn't have this, like De'Aaron Fox. I look at and I'm like, all right, that guy can break down a defense anytime he wants. I see it, I get it. Ja Morant, same thing. And by the way, Ja Morant, I was watching Memphis last night against, I don't even remember who the hell they played. Jonas Valanciunas.
He had awesome play. He played so awesome.
Well, there are two things. The floater is becoming a very good weapon for him, and he throws 5 or 6 passes now every game where I'm like, how did he even how around his waist? Like, how did he even see that? But you're right. I mean, I really do think it's just because Shai plays in a weird, strange way that feels containable in a way that these other guys just feel sort of volcanic, like you can't contain him. Right. I think he's awesome, and I think probably they should just max him and get it done.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that just brings it back to that conversation of what their plan may be, because they were supposed to be bad this year. It was supposed to be Shai and Cade Cunningham, Shai and Jalen Suggs, Shai and whoever. And like they could kind of align them together. But now I think that if Shai's just going to keep getting better. And here's part of the problem, Zach, that the Thunder are facing. Shai's been awesome. He's certainly very good. But like in this weird season, they've got so many tryhards on their team. That like the Kenrich Williams, the Hamidou Diallo.
Damn tryhards. Always screwing up everyone's
trying
plans.
So hard, and they are playing so hard. They all have something to play for. If you're going to tank, you need like the apathetic veteran. You need what Houston's got. You need the guys that are like don't want to do their film work, don't want to prepare for the game. Like you need the veterans that have made their money. They're not out to prove anything. They're just looking to get maybe a buyout or a trade and move on to a contender later on. The Thunder don't have that. They've got all minimum guys and professional veterans. And they all want to go out and play hard and prove something.
Well, here's what should happen. Here's what the basketball gods and the lottery gods should make happen. The Thunder fight against these lottery rule changes because they want the worst teams to get the high picks. Then when they rebuild, they're too good. And it shouldn't be harmful to them to be too good because they own all the Clippers picks, all the Heat. They own everybody's picks. So they can just count on one of these teams sometime will be bad and we'll get a good pick that way, much like Boston did. And then the lottery gods reward them with the lottery rules that they voted against so that they vault up like 9 spots and get the number 1 pick. That's what should happen. That's poetic justice. And then Sam Presti should have to come out and give a press conference and say, well, you know what? I like these new lottery rules. These worked out really well. This worked out
pretty well for me. This is pretty good. I think that is the kind of luck that typically does not happen for the Thunder. The league system.
Hold on. Luck is with the number 1 pick in the draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Greg Oden. That's luck.
Sure enough. Fair enough.
Who else is caught? Pick a couple other young players. Who else has caught your eye? We've got Roby, the Maladin kid is interesting. I think Baisley's been disappointing. Poku's in the G League.
He's hilarious. He's just hilarious to watch.
I'll tell you, man. That dude likes to shoot.
He likes to shoot. He's comical. He hasn't taken an NBA free throw yet, which is like my thing about him. He hasn't gotten to the free throw.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's played 300 something minutes and hasn't taken a free throw. It's kind of remarkable. Baisley's kind of interesting. You mentioned Baisley. He's certainly been disappointing because he's trying to do too much, but you can see a skill set there with him that I think he's kind of an interesting player to watch. See, you shook your head earlier on Diallo. Diallo, he fascinates me. There's something about Diallo that compels me.
No, I shook my head just because he's so frenetic. Like that's what was holding him back all this time. He's just completely out of control and he can't shoot. And this year he's a little bit more under control. They've played him at like a pseudo point guard a little bit, and it hasn't been like a disaster. But he still can't shoot. He's still shooting 28% from three or something. There's something about it that I don't quite buy. But then, what is he, 22? I mean, he's so young.
Yeah.
He's still so young. Baisley, I agree. Baisley was in my 10 things last year in a positive way. He's got a nice feel for the game. You can tell he reads the game pretty well. His passes are pretty advanced. His defensive rotation. The shooting, it's like he got a little carried away by getting hot in the bubble, and now he's like, I want to take like 6 threes a game, and it's not working out.
Yeah, and I don't know that he has a great offensive backup plan if that's not working for him. He's had some games that have been good, where he's kind of gotten a mid-range jumper going. I'll say this about Diallo though, and I'm already all in on making hyperbolic statements. So let me make one more. You know what? Diallo gives me a little bit of a poor man's Westbrook feel, like that kind of like downhill, charging at the basket, using his immense athleticism and competitive spirit to like overwhelm opponents. But like everybody knows the book on him is that he can't shoot. Now, I'm not saying he's Russell Westbrook. I'm just saying like I get that sort of like kind of vibe from him as I watch him. At no point am I saying Hamidou Diallo equals Russell Westbrook.
No, we're gonna edit. We're gonna edit this podcast so that's exactly what he's saying. Do you expect him to move Horford and Hill? Hill should be fairly easy to move given his light guarantee for next year. Horford, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah. I think I certainly think that they'll move Hill, just because I think that the Thunder historically try to find a middle ground with veteran players and kind of accommodate them on those sorts of things. And that's a lot of times how they get the buy-in that they get from some of these veteran guys. You know, other players walk into these situations and they want out immediately. Thunder kind of work with them and are very transparent with them about it. So I think, George Hill will probably move on. You mentioned it. Horford's got a big contract. He's actually played pretty well at times.
He's played good. I thought he would play well in Oklahoma City because they're going to play him at the 5 instead
There's
of
a lot of Eastern teams
year.
that could use him too. I mean, you could list out like 7 East teams that could really use Al Horford. I just don't know that there's a
Charlotte's
trade there.
Charlotte's the obvious one. I mean,
Yeah.
Charlotte, you put a real center on Charlotte. And I mean, Cody Zeller's a real center, but you put a real good shooting center on Charlotte, and suddenly.
See, I love him on Washington. I think the Wizards could desperately use Al Horford, but like, where do you make that? Where do you get to a trade there? I don't know where you could get on that one. I will say here's another interesting trade deadline piece to keep an eye on, and we've been talking about him, is Diallo. Like Diallo's eligible too, and like. I think that the Thunder may have to make a decision on him of like, what do we see with him? Because they don't typically let assets walk away for nothing. If he's going to go to restricted free agency or something, I don't think that you just let Diallo walk away.
To me, Diallo is if defenses can just ignore him when he doesn't have the ball, all this other stuff is great. It's great that he's advanced as a passer and a playmaker. He should be a good defender. I mean, I don't know. I think he's just okay, but he certainly has the tools to be really good and a good rebounder. As long as you can just say, I don't have to guard you out here. To me, you're a backup. That's all you are. Which is not a bad. By the way, being an NBA backup is incredible. I would love to be an NBA backup for one day just to feel like how great it would be to be that amazing at something. But my point is that should put his ceiling on. Like, nobody should pay him as a future starter yet in restricted free agency, I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. But I think of 2 teams that he makes a lot of sense for, and it's just because he's from there and he plays amazing when he goes to New York. But like it makes a lot of. I think he would fit well on the Nets, and I think he would fit really well on the Knicks, especially what the Knicks are kind of building right now. It seems to me like Hamidou Diallo just kind of fits that up and coming mentality that they have. And plus, if you've ever seen him play in those buildings, like, oh my goodness, Hamidou Diallo looks like Russell Westbrook when he goes to Madison Square Garden. I don't know what it is about it. He's from New York, so something gets into him.
Do you ever think, this is the last question, do you ever think the Thunder, I mean, I guess it would have to take, given the market, it would have to be a guy who had years left on his contract and expressed some desire to remain in Oklahoma City. We did see them trade real stuff for Paul George on an expiring contract. Is there ever a scenario where you're talking about the plan is Cade Cunningham and X, another, is there ever a scenario where they find someone in the NBA, a veteran star, who's like, we'll do the reverse Harden. We'll trade you everything we got for guy X, whoever that is. Is that even in their thinking?
I think it is, and I think it's becoming more their thinking again because of SGA. Like when they're evaluating him to say like, okay, so if we went and got a similar level star or a similar level young player that could kind of align with him, and so you get that distressed star, that everybody is out there looking for, whoever that might be. You can project on who that guy might be down the line. I mean, the Thunder absolutely could cash in some chips, right? Like they've got the bank to do this. And so, like, I think that could be out there. I don't think that has been kind of part of what their plan is. I think that what they want to do is build a very organic team with young, high-level draft picks and then stock the back end of the roster and use those other picks to restock with first-rounders or make other kind of step-by-step trades. But, I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that they do that just because I think that they're kind of reconfiguring based on the successes of this team and the successes of SGA specifically.
Well, I'm assuming they could just trade Dort for a star straight up. I assume that Dort's
what are we
trade
talking
value.
About? Why are we acting as if they don't have the second star already?
Like Dort for a name a star. Dort straight up gets it done. I love watching that dude. I don't really know if he's playing basketball still. I mean, he kind of is. He gets places off the dribble, attacking closeouts, but on defense, he's playing Dort ball. I mean, he is playing. He's a football player. He's a linebacker playing basketball. And the other thing he does, he's so strong and he's so fast. This is my favorite thing about watching him play defense. He'll go under screens against guys that he should absolutely not go under screens against, like really good shooters, because he just thinks I'm so fast and I'm so explosive and so strong that I can get away with it. And sometimes he gets burned, and that's the fun part. Is like sometimes you get burned. I can't take my eyes off that dude.
You talk about why the Thunder are fun to watch. It's because they got Lou Dort on their team.
Lou Dort got to have the highest shot arc in the entire league. Just I don't know how they go in. I don't know if he knows where they're going, but all I know is they go real high. All right, Royce Young, what else we got? What should we be on the lookout from you in the next couple of weeks? Anything you want to, or any recent piece you want to pump up?
I did write something about annoying moves that players do, kind of the Trae Young phenomenon.
That's right, last week, yeah.
And that seems to become kind of, looks like that's becoming my niche, Zach, is where I'm going to write about weird things players do.
You had the one over the summer about free throw defense, distractions. Free throw defense, which was quite good.
Free throw defense. So I think I've got my eye on another one of those types of stories that I'm sort of working on right now.
Awesome. All right, Royce Young, we'll just call you quirky NBA features writer. Stay safe down there. Thanks for your time.
You bet, Zach. Happy to do it.